Welcome and hello, hello and welcome, welcome and hello and welcome, guys. Welcome and hello, bienvenidos a todos. Welcome and hello, guys. Hello and welcome, greetings, salutations, welcome, hello and welcome. And just let me add, just for good measure, guys, welcome and hello welcome and hello and welcome, guys. Welcome and hello. Thank you, thank you. Welcome and hello, guys. It's un poco Moss, the show where we give you just a little bit more. I kind of want to change it up because I've talked till I'm blue in the face about SoFi and SMCI and 10x and all these other companies that I talk about a lot recently, Prop and IOVA and a couple of penny stocks. I talked in the past a lot about Microsoft. What's going on, Carl C. Mark? The Mattress King of Chicago is here. Thanks very much. Yeah, I had my hair in some fruity little man bun, and then I had it in a hat, and then I just kind of got sick of all that, and it was giving me a headache. And I believe it's pulling my high hairline even higher, and these frown lines are just ridiculous. Kind of, my face is resembling sort of a some type of a topographical map. But anyway, what's going on? Clap my dog. The great Oleg Alexandrov is here. Chris Concert Corner is here. Do you think SoFi is going to go up? Of course, I think SoFi is going to go up, but I always say that. It looks like they really have SoFi pegged at $18.50, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But I'm going to talk about SoFi, and I'm going to talk about CRISPR, and I'm going to talk about SMCI. But I'm going to do it in a different context because I always just talk about the companies and I try to look at the chart and I try to analyze the news. But that's really not very useful. You can read that on your own, and my technical charting is at a kindergarten caveman level where I'm basically just trying to rub a couple of sticks together and see if I can make some smoke. But what I really want you guys to do is think differently about how you invest, why you invest, how you approach things. Sorry guys, I've got this deal all wrong. I have my screen up. It's all let's see. Stop screen, share screen, window, this one. Yeah, I think I had my entire screen up, which is a big mistake. Big mistake. You guys don't need to see the method behind the madness. But anyway, guys, that's StreamYard. Yeah, so I keep StreamYard over to the left. I used to keep it to the right, so now I keep it to the left. So if I'm on mute, am I on mute? I'm not on mute. So if I'm on mute, I can at least see you guys yelling at me, and I don't end up going on for like 25, 30 minutes, like an ish hole that I am. Anyway, so what I want to do is try to get you to think about offerings, convertible notes, generally dilutive money raises, and what they mean in context. So you know not only if you should run away from the stock, but if you are going to go deeper, if you are going to buy that dilution because you know it's always going to dip below that offering range, or if it's an at the money or whatever, it's just going to probably crash down, 10%, 20%, who knows? But how do you know when to buy? That I can't really tell you. You have to kind of feel that out on your own. It's very hard to time a stock or call the bottom, but a stock like SoFi that they did their most recent offering at $27.50, and then you see the stock pin now at $18.50 after coming down into, what was it, the 16s or low 17s. I'm very comfortable buying here because you have to ask yourself questions like this. Well, the smart money was just buying at $27.50. Does that mean they're stupid because the stock went to $18.50? So are those guys just idiots? Or is it all part of a master plan where they're trying to get you to lose patience and sell your shares into this pinned price action at $18.50? And then the same people that were buying at $27.50 will accumulate your shares at $18.50 and add to their position. So is the stupid party the ones market makers who bought at $27.50, or is the stupid party the retail investor who goes ahead and dumps at $18.50 and sells the dip and smells the rip? So that's the context that I'm going for. And I think there's just to do a couple of case studies, because these are stocks I often talk about, and CRISPR was a stock I was buying today when it went down to $50, had been up at 60. But if you look at CRISPR, it's been, pinned in this range between you know, 60 bucks on the high side and basically 50 bucks on the low side. It dipped below that, but it's been pinned there for now like 5 months. So I would argue that even though there's a ton of volume coming in, that's more churn and that's more to fix the price and pin it down to 50 hit stops. I mean, it can definitely go lower. It can definitely go lower. But if you look at the offering they just did, I mean, it goes out like 5 years and it converts at like $77. So that offering was at a big premium to the price, even when it was up near $60 when they did the offering. So that's a huge green flag. So what I tried to do was pump a couple of paragraphs of my scattershot thinking into Copilot and some other AI engines, and then kind of distilled it down and edited it into some actionable things that we can kind of think about as a framework. So when an offering comes, we're not approaching it from a fear base, a panic base. We're approaching it from a logical, systematic way of thinking, a critical way of thinking, so we can take advantage of opportunities, but we can also smell trouble and stay away from a bear trap. So, or not a bear trap, but just a general, trap of a value trap, a buy the dip when you're really just buying, a falling knife of dog shit, big flaming bag of dog shit. So we'll go over that. We'll go over these three stocks. We'll go over the price action, kind of talk about the day. I guess probably we're not going to be able to avoid talking about Neo. We're not going to be able to avoid talking about the war. We're not going to be able to talk about all this The thing that bothers me, I guess, just about the war and us, blowing up. A lot of people were saying the other day, "Oh, Iran has Tomahawk missiles," and I was like, "No, they don't." only three countries we've given Tomahawk missiles, and they're very, very tightly controlled. There's absolutely no way somebody sold those Tomahawks to Iran. There's no way they reverse engineered a Tomahawk. They're basically using these drones that have the sophistication of a model airplane. Tomahawk is multi-million dollar missile that goes long 20 feet off the ground and hits its target within a couple of feet. If you look at the Iranian strikes, they're a lot more random. They're a lot less controlled. The weapon systems like these Shahad drones are a lot less sophisticated. So, in the fog of war, this girls' school was by a naval base, and, we accidentally blew it up and we killed, whatever it was, 160 children, young girls. And I know people say, like, Ben Shapiro was out and, saying, "Hey, that's collateral damage. That's the fog of war. We didn't do anything wrong." And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, anybody was trying to target a school. I don't think, that's the kind of thing maybe the Russians do, blow up hospitals. I mean, we're blowing up a lot of hospitals too. But the bottom line is being accountable, being credible to your allies, to your negotiating partners, even to your adversaries on the world stage. So when the president comes out and he goes, "Hey, this was Iran that blew this up. They all, they have Tomahawk." It's like, it's just so obviously a lie and just obviously made up that it just destroys our credibility on the world stage. And we end up kind of in this echo chamber of nonsense where we're not even able to acknowledge our mistake. I mean, I'll salute, Senator Kennedy, who I actually kind of like. He's like an old, foghorn, leghorn. He always gets up in the hearings and kind of does this theatrical questioning. He's kind of like a grandfatherly type. Seems like a really nice guy to me, but he seems like he's actually interested in getting to the truth and drilling down and holding people accountable regardless of their party. I know he's a very conservative Southern senator, but he came out in an interview and he said, "Look, it's a mistake. We should apologize for it. We should say how unfortunate it is, take steps that we try to never do something like that again as best we can." I mean, it is war, whether you want to claim it's war or not, but I worry about our credibility slipping away on the world stage. That's what I worry about as we prosecute these non-wars, non-interventions, non-regime changes, these types of things. It just, when you say something that's just completely on its face, obviously false, and you try to sell that, and then the next day the military puts out a report, the Department of War puts out a report and says, "Yeah, this was us. We messed up." And, it's a lot better off if just all the time, if you own your mistakes and you're accountable. Even when you make a horrible mistake, people will respect you more and you'll have a better chance in the next round of negotiations, next round of partnerships, and next round of adversarials, and next round of game theory, whatever that might be, if you have credibility. If you have no credibility, it's very difficult to operate on the world stage with anything other than brute force. And brute force doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It didn't work. It never works in the Middle East. It just doesn't. You end up in a quagmire. This thing is going to be over in 2 weeks or 6 weeks or 6 months. I mean, I saw a mashup going back where they were playing the comments that Rumsfeld and others and, Powell, and they were playing it next to what Hegseth and Trump were saying right now. They're saying the exact same thing about Iraq, where we were for, 15, 20 years and then transition into Afghanistan. It's just basically this endless war in the Middle East where arguably we didn't accomplish anything. I mean, if you look back in the Iran-Iraq war, we were arming Saddam Hussein and letting him, throw chemical weapons at military and civilian targets in Iran with impunity, and we picked that winner. And then, a couple of decades later or less than that, we're in there saying, Saddam Hussein. It's basically like, these guys are our puppets, and as long as they continue to function as our sock puppet with the United States hand up their ass doing exactly what we want, same thing with the Shah, then we'll allow them to remain in power regardless of what evil sons of bitches they are. But the minute their interest, they put their interests ahead of the U.S. national interest or whatever the case may be, and Israeli national interest, because I think basically Israel started this war and dragged us into it. So this is my war rant, but I'm sorry, guys. I've just been reading so much of the news, hearing so much of the news. This is what I keep seeing. Like, it did change the news cycle, guys. Remember, the whole news cycle for months and months was just about the ICE and the mass deportations and that type of thing. And then it shifted completely to the Epstein files, where all this news is coming out, all these revelations are coming out, and then they're redoing the investigations. There's all kinds of new papers coming out, and there's new searches in New Mexico, and there's new victims, and there's new evidence and all this stuff. And then it shifted completely away from the Epstein files to now, a hot war in the Middle East. That's, and again, they said, Rumsfeld said, I don't know if it takes 6 days or 6 weeks, but it's certainly not going to last 6 months. And then 6 years and 10 years later, we still have people there fighting and dying. And even today, we still have, military base in Iraq. And that's one of the main ones that the Iranians are targeting with attacks. And that's where people got killed. And that's where people are getting wounded. So, and when you listen to the Congress people who get the classified briefings, they're basically saying the administration is preparing a ground invasion because you really can't accomplish goals. Everybody's saying, okay, mission accomplished. Remember that, George Bush on the aircraft carrier and all that stuff. It's very dangerous to just declare victory and move on when you haven't actually, achieved any objectives. But that's hard to define because you don't really know what your objectives are. 6 months ago, we bombed with Israel. We said, hey, the nuclear program has been obliterated. It's going to be years and years before they can get a weapon now. And then just a few short months later, Trump comes out and says, hey, they could have a nuclear bomb in 2 weeks if we didn't do that. But then they're saying this is to obliterate the nuclear program again. And then some people are saying it's regime change based on human rights abuses. Other people are saying it's national security because they're going to target us with ICBMs, but that doesn't make any sense. I mean, I really can't stand Rand Paul. I mean, I'm kind of align with him because I consider myself more of a centrist libertarian, very conservative on the fiscal side. I'm kind of for low taxes, more personal responsibility, but on the social side, I don't believe in these culture wars. I essentially believe in, freedom, letting people do what they want. If you want to, be some, crazy guy who goes out and does all kinds of crazy stuff and wants to do drugs and do this or that, if you're not hurting anybody else, I don't really care. And if you're a Christian conservative who wants to homeschool your kids and teach them your values and this stuff, I'm all for your right to do that. So I'm kind of for a lot of personal freedom as long as you're not harming other people, harming society, this sort of thing. I know there's freedom is not unlimited, to sort of say your freedom ends where my nose begins. But anyway, guys, I hate to give you this long rant, but it's just I'm thinking through all these issues and I'm trying to make sense of our foreign policy. I'm trying to make sense of what we're doing here. It's very, very difficult for me. um, yeah. Yeah, Carl, that's a good point. Yeah, Zorro Ranch, Billy Jack, now it looks like the New Mexico authorities were investigating that pot on the tip. Yeah, you can't buy tomahawks on the black market though, because are no tomahawks on the black market. It's not like Russian weapons or former Eastern Bloc nations where you can actually buy their, military hardware. Tomahawks, stuff like that's very tightly controlled. So it's just, it is what it is, guys. The truth is the truth. And the Department of War, who I still call the Department of Defense just habitually, I don't really care that they change. I think it's kind of silly, when you advertise yourself as the president of peace and you campaign, a central part of your campaign is no foreign wars. No foreign wars. So why do you change the Department of Defense, which kind of aligns with your, profession, what you're professing, into the Department of War, and then, starting I would argue a war of choice, because I don't think Iran was building a nuclear weapon. I know they weren't anywhere close to building credible ICBMs. I mean, so I know they could target U.S. interests in the region, and I know Iran is a horribly bad actor, and I hate that regime with a passion. I'd like to see the regime changed, but we didn't affect regime change. We just cut the head of the snake off, and it turned out there were tons of baby snakes inside. And even if we kill this new guy's son, they're going to select somebody else, and they're just going to keep going as long as they have the capability to control the population through fear, violence, but more of that, their spider web of economic controls through jobs, housing, food, fuel. They have people overseas, the sort of upper crust and more educated elements of society have their children and family overseas in the West, and they're funding that. And Iran funds all kinds of different groups in all kinds of different countries. It's not just, Lebanon and Syria and Yemen and every other place, but they're also funding, different groups in all parts of the world. It's really quite a web. When you go into reading it, it's really a rabbit hole. But anyway, guys, I apologize again for the rant. I don't have any friends. I don't have anybody who will listen to me, because I'm absolutely way too verbose and obnoxious, and I'm aging poorly, all kinds of bad things. But so anyway, that's a rant. Yeah, no tracks. I actually own some Nebius. I got into some core weave. I was watching the Best of Us investor guy, and he was talking about his top 4 stocks for this year. So I started loading into some of them because the guy has a hell of a good track record. I'm also a huge fan of Tevis Fundamentals of Investing. As you know, if you guys aren't subscribed to Tevis, you should be, because he's a really smart guy, Tevis, and he puts out some really good information. I love Tanner too. Tanner's more like the analytical. He's like a stat guy. He's analyzing information, where I think Tevis is more like a broad idea man, and he kind of sees the bigger picture for me, sees the trends, sees where things are going. So I got to say, Tevis is really one of my favorite turders. It's not only his constantly evolving look from like, a young Elvis to like a Zorro to a Telly Savalas. Like, dude, the guy's a chameleon, but he's super smart. He really is super smart. I try to watch all his videos when I have time. Anyway, welcome and hello, guys. Was this supposed to be about offering? So I just want to analyze, like, when is an offering good? When is it bad? When is it hard to tell? When should you buy? All these types of things. If you go over the recent example, yeah, Roy is absolutely incredible. I mean, he has a different style than Tevis, and I really like them together because they have a really good synergy. I think Roy, again, is a little bit more on the analytical side, and Tevis, I'd say, is a little bit more creative in his thinking, which is I'm way too creative in my thinking, to the point it's often not even grounded in reality or logic. So no, I love the shows with Roy and Tevis. Great pair. It's amazing what you can get on this channel excluded, but it's amazing what the quality of programming you get on YouTube for absolutely free. I was just reading that YouTube has become the biggest media company in the world, I guess, in terms of revenues or whatever. And I'm not surprised, and it's growing very, very rapidly because this format appeals to people because you can come on and you see things completely unfiltered. You get a diversity of viewpoints. You get some content that's incredibly great. You get some content that's completely useless and everywhere in between. So it's really a grab bag, and you have to filter through so much noise to get to the signal. But if you do and you know how to access it, it's just a tremendous resource. And there's so many stocks that I wouldn't even know about, I wouldn't be in, I wouldn't have made money on. There's others that I wish I never heard of, quite frankly, you know, but it's neither here nor there. I hate stealth wealth. Every video is just think about your valuation, assuming I'm not a fucking moron. Get financial advice off of YouTube. All right. I'm not going to go there because I really don't like to bash folks, but I respect your opinion, Carl Seamark. You are the mattress king of Chicago, so I'm not one to question the great Carl Seamark. Billy Jack says Iran don't have good bathrooms. That's kind of what I'm talking about, Billy Jack. The regime is just using all their power and influence to, sort of keep up the proxy war, keep up the terrorism, if you will, and control the population domestically, repress the population, whatever you want to call it. I just don't think the Iranian regime was in any position to attack the United States. And I also don't think they're as crazy as people let on. I think they're self-interested. I think they're logical. And a lot of their actions and statements, though I completely disagree with them, they had a logic to them. They had a framework to them. And now you've created something that's so uncertain, so unknown. I think you've raised the risk. You haven't reduced the risk. Now, you might say we've degraded their military capability, but their Navy wasn't going to, like, we've taken out the Iranian Navy. I mean, we sunk one of their destroyers that was full of their national band on the way home from an exercise from India. Do you really think the Iranians want a full-scale hot war with the United States where we could just wipe their entire country off the map, should we so choose? That's not a survival instinct. That's, completely illogical. And then, you could argue they're not really attacking Israel directly unless, they're being directly attacked. So this is the second time they've been lulled into negotiations and then bombed into, into dust. And it's like, okay, why would you trust these negotiations again? People are saying, asking their foreign minister, do you want to ask for a cease? Like, we're not asking for a ceasefire. If we ask for a ceasefire and then you grant a ceasefire, you go back to negotiations, you'll use those negotiations to get intelligence and locate senior members of our government, and then you'll kill them. So what's the point of negotiating with an actor who's completely disingenuous? I just think that's where I'm saying, okay, you get him once and you kill the guy, and that's great. I think he was a bad guy. I think he shouldn't be in power. And I'm not mad at that decision at all. But the point is, what comes next? Like, what happens? What is the plan? What was the plan for the Strait? Keeping the Strait open. And New York Times had an article like, hey, they badly miscalculated the Iranian response. And then you have, Hegseth, who, this guy as Secretary of War just absolutely terrifies me. I don't think he has the foggiest idea what he's doing. He was like a captain or something. And I mean, I know he went to Harvard and he's a smart guy and all that stuff, but I don't see why you pick your cabinet and stuff off of Fox News. I mean, you got Judge Janine, who's just, slushing a box of wine between commercial breaks, and then you make her U.S. attorney, and then you need a guy for HHS. You pick up a couple of all-stars like old Touchdown Kennedy, and you got Mehmet Oz. I mean, Dr. Oz. What are you going to get Dr. Phil in there, like running the economy? These guys are, you got this Witkoff guy who's negotiating all of your two main negotiators all over the world, not only with Russia, but also with the Middle East, are Jared Kushner and Witkoff. Jared Kushner is a slumlord. I mean, he doesn't know the first thing about foreign policy. I don't care what you guys say. I studied this stuff. I know what I'm talking about. And you can say I'm a fat asshole, granted. But am I wrong? Am I wrong? He's like, no, Walter, you're not wrong. You're just an asshole. He's like, thank you very much. That's the concession he was looking for. And then you have this Witkoff guy who's a real estate developer, has absolutely no relevant experience to negotiate with these world leaders, to negotiate solutions to any of this stuff. And you have the real career people who actually know what they're doing are just pushed to the sidelines in favor of these guys who just, heap praise on Trump like he's, Kim Jong Un, which, I mean, I don't know. I just don't know where to go with this. It hurts my brain. Katie Wentworth, Whiskey Pete. I think he stopped drinking. That's what they say. I know he was a complete drunk. Um, his own mother wrote him a letter saying he was just the most despicable human being on earth. And then he calls himself a Christian nationalist. I mean, what are these conservative Christians who cheat on every wife and just do these horrible, these are your family values? I mean, he's cheating on his wife with a coworker, and then he leaves the wife, marries the wife, and then he's cheating on that wife with the coworker. It's like, come on, how dumb do you have to be to believe this shit? Have you guys ever read the New Testament? Do you know what's in it? Like, is this Christian? I don't know what the fuck is wrong with people. I don't know where we lost our way, but somewhere you have to have adults in the room. You can't just pick everybody from Fox News who is like a, lower level officer in the National Guard or something and then assume he can run the biggest, most powerful bureaucracy on the face of the earth. It's a recipe for disaster. And those chickens are coming home to roost, Bobby Boucher, because we have no fucking plan. We've broken the entire world energy market. And it's just basically a colossal fuck up. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do regime change in Iran. We should. That regime has been there for 50 years, and that's been 50 years too long. And I like the instinct that Trump has. I'm a man of action. Everybody else, Biden, Obama, Bush, they've been too much of a pussy, too weak to basically actually confront these guys with a credible threat of force. All right. Let me pause this rant for a minute. I got to take this call. One sec, guys. Okay, guys, welcome and hello once again to me. Sorry about that interruption, but yeah, I don't mean to make this whole thing. And no tracks full. I think Rubio is the adult in the room. I think Rubio is pretty intelligent guy. He's grounded in reality. He understands history. He understands what's going on in the world. Now, some of his statements, he gets a little, out there because I think he just has to align himself with the views of other people in the administration. But you can tell that, am I on mute? I'm not on mute. You can tell Trump is listening a lot more to Rubio these days. He's completely kind of sidelined JD Vance there. But my problem is not with Rubio. My problem is not even really with Trump. The problem I have is the people he's put in charge of a lot of these things. They just simply do not have, even if they're good people, even if they're intelligent people, which I'm not saying they're not, but they don't. You have to have experience managing a giant bureaucracy, managing this many people, managing this many moving parts. You have to have experience with world leaders. I mean, when they know that Russia is helping Iran target U.S. interests, U.S. forces, U.S. military, and they asked this Witkoff, and he goes, "Well, we had a phone call with Putin and Putin's underlings, and they say they're not doing that, so we take them at their word." And I wish he was saying that kind of playing possum, but he's not. They actually think Putin is a good actor, and you can trust his word. I mean, if that's where you're coming from, you have fucking shit for brains. Putin is a fucking butcher. He's a monster. He lays waste to civilian populations like he's, knocking over a fucking Jenga set. The guy is a mass murderer, a war criminal. How do you think he made his bones? With fucking Boris Yeltsin, leveling cities in Chechnya, killing hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians, making cities into rubble. That's what he does. He stands off armies, brings in, artillery, and basically takes cities down to the ground until they're just dust and then declares victory. There's no victory. The guy's thinking is like, just a ram just butting its heads together until one wins. And Putin's a very, very smart guy, very intelligent guy. I've read a lot of what he said and written. I've heard a lot. He's just fucking evil and ruthless, but he's incredibly intelligent and strategic. And if there's one winner of this entire thing, it's Putin. Because energy prices are through the roof. They're unsanctioning some of the Russian oil because they have no choice. Because otherwise oil's going to $200 a barrel unless they can get Iran to let the strait open up again. And Trump's saying, hey, we'll just have the Navy escort these people through. And Hegseth is saying, grow a pair, just sail through and get blown up. I mean, do you hear yourselves? Do you fucking hear yourselves? How is this our foreign policy? How are these people in charge? I hope Rubio is leading the way because I think he really is the only one out of this group who really understands anything. I mean, Hegseth, I think, just has this weird hatred and bloodlust where he just wants to be a war fighter, spill blood in the name of Christ and tattoo some weird Norse shit on his chest. I can't fucking believe this stuff, man. Breaking everything. But yeah, I know some of you guys are probably big fans of this stuff. And, people are like, oh, you just hate Trump. You have Trump to. I don't. I've been rooting for him since the beginning. He won the election. People elected him for a reason. Kamala, I think, would have been a disaster as a president. But, nobody elected me to anything. When did sorry, yeah, guys. Yeah, Putin is obviously ex-KGB, as lifelong KGB. He's still KGB. I don't wear any socks. I wear flip-flops. Sorry, Jeff. No, I know, guys. This has been all that's on my mind. Again, I have nobody to talk to, but I apologize. So let's go back to kind of my framework and what I was supposed to talk about. Like SoFi, there's a lot to like about their offering because they're getting it from a position of strength at 27.50. But then the flip side of that is a huge momentum killer. So why not let the stock naturally run up to the mid 30s and then do an offering from an even greater position of strength? Because the only thing you can conclude is that management thought the stock was trading over its fair value. Now, why does the stock fall so far back? I think because not fundamentally. Fundamentally, I still think SoFi was undervalued in the 30s. I think SoFi is worth 37 because I think they're going to do $1 EPS plus next year and probably something like $1.45, $1.50 the following year. And I think the EPS at that growth rate becomes extremely cheap, on a price to not only a price to sales, but a price to earnings ratio. So, but they really stepped on a rally, and that's something you don't want to do unless you have to do it out of necessity. Now, you go back to this is a pretty good article, guys, on Super Micro, actually. One stock for long-term investors and two facing challenges. Kind of like Stock Story because it juxtaposes different stocks that are hot at the time. But with Super Micro, it's kind of a different thing because there's good and bad with their offering. They sort of did an offering out of necessity. They were between a rock and a hard place. They had all the accounting stuff. And then they did this big offering. And you remember Best of Us investors really hated that offering, the poison pill and all that stuff. But I was one of these people saying the offering is bad in the sense that they're desperate and they need to do it. So it's not from a position of strength. It's not a choice. It's not kind of them choosing their own destiny and them choosing the timing. They have to raise money now because they have to pay for all these processors in advance and they have to fund the growth. But I was willing to buy into it because I believed in the growth story. I believed we were going to see hyper growth. I believe we're going to see a company coming from, just a few short years ago selling 3 and 5 billion and then just a few years later, I think they're going to be selling 50 billion and then more and more and more because I just believe AI was not hype. AI was not a flash in the pan. We're just at the very beginning of the AI growth curve. And I would argue we're still just at the very beginning of the AI growth curve and the AI infrastructure spending. So that one is a little bit hard to figure out. Now, and also you have to look at the offering price. Like SoFi's offering was obviously just an offering. They were selling shares, diluting shareholders right then at 27.50. CRISPR, on the other hand, and SMCI, on the other hand, it's more CRISPR is a convertible note. So the convertible note is due, they're paying, and CRISPR also has a favorable interest rate. They can take that money, put it in the bank at 3.5, they're only paying 1.7. But the thing that made no sense to me about the CRISPR offering is they already have almost $2 billion in cash and a 2-year runway. But a 2-year runway is like a 1-year runway because you have to raise money with 3 quarters left, 4 quarters left. And the closer you get to that 0 hour, the worst deal you're going to get. So I understand why they did it out of an extreme position of strength from a balance sheet perspective. Now they're losing money. There's always so many of these different things to weigh and think about, which is, why I wanted to do this video, not just make some rant about, the war and why I can't make sense of it. It's like, and I'm not, necessarily anti-interventionist type of libertarian. I'm more of a social type of libertarian. I believe if you're going to have all this, if you're going to speak softly and carry a big stick, you have to be prepared to use the stick, even if you got a tiny wang. Tiny wang, speak softly, have a tiny wang, carry a big stick. And if somebody gets far enough out of line, you got to be prepared to hit them with the stick. So, why spend couple trillion dollars a year on our military if we're not going to do anything with it? An impotent guy with a giant schlang. You know what I mean? SoFi, let's see what Jeff M has to say. SoFi 27.50 offering looks like a really smart move now. Lots of it. It looks like a really smart move, Jeff, but you have to ask yourself, would that rally have been stepped on at least that hard without the offering? Because it looked like the after earnings popped up to 32.50, 32.70. It was going to probably come down, I thought, somewhere around 25, 26, and then leg up again. I don't think it would have ever got back down into the teens without an offering. But I could very well be wrong about that on a technical basis. Like you Wyckoff guys, stock went from 8 to 32. It's got to come down, A, B, C, D. That stuff sometimes works, it sometimes doesn't. But the bottom line, it was technically overbought and it was going to retrace. I mean, when you go from 8 to 32, that's a hell of a move. And this isn't a software stock, a pure AI play where you're going to get these 10x, 20x moves. It's still a relatively, mundane, predictable business, even though they're, transforming it to a higher margin, fee-based, transaction-based, these types of things rather than just, purely the net interest margin play. So there's so much to think about. But what I want you guys to do, if possible, when you see an offering, don't just go offering bad, sell, or offering bad, try to find the bottom, buy the dip. Think about the offering, think about what they're doing. And then CRISPR, with that converting at $76, that's a huge green flag that the market makers are willing to pay more than the current share price. Now with SoFi, it was a couple dollar discount. I think it was trading at like 27.50. That's not necessarily a horrible thing if you believe the fair value of SoFi was somewhere around there, somewhere below there. I would argue the CRISPR is really from a strong position of strength all the way across. SoFi is more neutral. SMCI looks very, very shaky, but then you could juxtapose that with a penny stock like JAGX that does a different money raise every 2 weeks to just basically keep the lights on and keep paying executive salaries. But anyway, yeah, Putin. Are you talking about Putin, Jeff? Yeah, Putin he is a ruthless motherfucker. I mean, I think he would slit his own mother's throat, like go Kaiser Soze. And then this man of will showed this man what will was. And, he cut his own kid's throat or whatever. It's just, I mean, Putin is that guy. Putin is that guy who, if he needs strategically it helped him, I think he would kill his family, kill his kids. I don't think he gives a fuck. I don't think I think to a certain extent, he's, a psychopath, a psychopathic mass murderer who, masquerading as a world leader. And he is a world leader. I mean, he's not masquerading as one. He's just psychologically extremely damaged. Now, I have no idea if that's a product of just his natural personality or if that's part of KBG training and, being in that life. Like, I don't know what it would be like to be in that life because I'm a, you know, soft, fat suburban douche who's lived my whole life in peace and freedom and relative prosperity. Now, I've been poor as shit. I've been homeless, lived in my car, all that kind of thing. Not severely, but just, transitional periods. But I've been up and I've been way up and I've been way down. I've made fortunes and lost fortunes because I'm a gambler. I'm stupid. I don't, I'm not one of these guys that say, hey, you made it, protect it. I'm like, I made it. Let's gamble it and try to get more. And then, wind up sleeping in our truck, eating, chicken pot pies out of the Marie Callender's dumpster. And those chicken pot pies travel well. I like something you can eat well out of a dumpster, like a donut. They're usually in a box, different stuff. Certain restaurants are better than others when you're trying to eat out of a dumpster. Asking for a friend. Let's see. Let's get to some of your comments because I'm talking. I'm sick of listening to myself, guys. Even the voices in my head are just fucking obnoxious. I really can't stand myself. I'll tell you. This man bun's not helping. I've lost most of the respect I once had for myself with this man bun and my rapidly receding hairline. Can I get a poll? Should I get Botox? A lot of people are telling me I should get Botox. These lines are just getting completely out of control. I don't want to spend money putting rat poison in my face. I wish I was somebody just age like a dignified way, like a Sean Connery. You're playing both sides. I want to hear a Sean Connery impression. When my little brother was living with me, he was doing a Sean Connery impression and he wouldn't stop nonstop for like 3 weeks. He almost put me in a madhouse. He almost drove me completely insane, which was his goal. Just everything was Connery. He'd just come back. He was like, what's for dinner? He's like, do you want a water? And it's just endless Connery. And after, weeks and weeks of that, I think we got into a physical altercation. He's young and strong. He's a, all-American athlete. So I probably got the worst end of that. But if I get really pissed off, I'm like that old bull or that old elephant where I'm still hanging on to my pride. The young one is just nipping at my heels, kind of toying with me. But you don't want to piss me off that bad because the old wounded bear can still lash out. Does anything I say make any sense? I feel like I'm just a psychopath, like ranting about nothing into the wind, like a guy talking to a bus bench or a coffee cup. What about kids? What about you skateboarders? The only plus side is if SoFi hits 12, you have to think it's a big recession. I do have a lot of cash waiting to buy other things. Yeah, SoFi at 12, I mean, I don't think you could get more compelling than that. That's another, third off the price. But if we get into a big recession, you start to get a lot of defaults. You start to get everybody cutting back their capex. You start to see a lot of these deals sort of not take flight. Cornbread, the parlay. I used to play a lot of teasers, a lot of parlays. I used to drive from when I lived in San Diego. I'd drive with my buddy Mark down to Caliente in Tijuana, and we just place parlays and just get shit-faced and just gamble our asses off. And then we'd end up meeting our bookie behind an In-N-Out and usually paying, sometimes collecting. Use Jim Carrey's plastic surgery. Billy Jack, you're funny, man. You're a funny fuck. I like you. I don't know. Billy Jack just seems like good people to me. Putin is a pussycat. I don't know about that, man. He's that nasty type of pussycat that you go to pet and just scratches your face. You need plastic surgery. Saw a clip of Jim Carrey doing the Grinch face with no makeup on and didn't realize it's just his face. TJ is cray cray. My life sucks too, and I'm currently entertained by your commentary. Thanks, Chris, Concert Corner. Well, you like concerts, you like music. You can't be that bad. Let's promote some shows, guys. I got so many things I want to do if I wasn't such a fat old Karen who just talks about everything and never acts on it. I want to do something simple, like open a restaurant. Dumb, broke people open restaurants. I'm a pretty intelligent capable person, but I just let my self-doubt, creep in. I let, this paralysis of non-action, having thousands of ideas, but not being able to bring any of them to fruition. Oh, it's a mental prison, guys. Sucks. I think the growth that comes via SoFi money raised long term is net positive for the company. That's another thing I was going to talk about, because when you talk about stepping on momentum, management does not care about momentum. Management cares about where can they gain an advantage at the current level, because you don't know when the momentum is going to run out. You don't know when some other shoe is going to drop. So they say, right where we are now, how can we gain the most advantage to position ourselves for long-term success? Now, some of the shareholders might be midterm, some of them might be short term, some might be swing turding, some of them might be day turding, some of them might be just playing the stock for a year or two and calling that sort of a, I call that short term thinking. Like long term thinking for me is like, when do I want to retire? If I'm best case scenario, I could probably retire in like 5 or 7 years, probably more realistically, 10, 12 years. So I don't need the money from my stocks for my monthly living expenses and this type of thing. I'm thinking of it as, a retirement type of thing. So anyway, change you from left to right hand, any option for the fat fingers owners. Yeah, just get your fingers in as many pies as possible, and then lick your fingers, and then you basically end up with a free sample. Noto willing to sacrifice a short-term compensation package to set up the company for long-term, says it all. But yeah, Jeff, he wasn't going to hit 45 anyway, and he knew it. So I think he was taking something instead of nothing. And I think he saw that run, and I think he knew there was going to be a pullback, and I think he, took advantage. Let's see. Sorry about that, guys. What's up, fight? Fire. Fire in your wire. If you're talking jerk chicken, or you're talking about a dry jerk, or you're talking about a tear jerk, whatever. It's not a tear jerker, it's a tear jerk. That's what you can do alone in your closet when you're out of lube. Management does not care about the 1-2 year share. Yeah, absolutely. They don't care about any shareholders. Sanjay's left foot. They don't care about any shareholders except themselves. That's what you have to get through your head. They don't care about you. Noto seems like a nice guy. Uncle Chucky seems like a nice guy. Couldn't care if you live or die. Wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire. You are a poor peon to them. They are playing with hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, and you are playing a game of pocket pool alone in the dark. Don't you get it? Oh, let's see. Guys, great Princess J checking in. I think you could scour the world over and you wouldn't find a better woman than Princess J. That's just my opinion. Someone was saying, I like the way you talk about your partner. It's like, it's not puffery. It's not salesmanship. She's that good. She's that amazing. You couldn't find somebody who would put up with me, listen to me, try to get me to do stuff, try to deal with my, fruit fly attention span, all my ADD issues, my tiny wang energy, my obnoxious defensive Karening, my endless bullshit, my blabbermouth. It's impossible, but she sees something in me, and I'm so grateful because I see everything in her. So, sweetheart, I know you're not watching because you have better things to do, and you're trying to run your business, and you're trying to wrangle those cats that you call employees. What an amazing person. I love you, honey. Yeah, me too, Mark. Me too. I waited forever, I've never been divorced, no kids. I'm old as shit. Finally, I don't know. We've been together, about 6 years. So I waited kind of a lifetime for her, but in retrospect, I'm glad that I did because, if I would have taken some of the other things on offer earlier in my life, I know it would just blown up in disaster. I used to be, compulsive gambler, heavy drinker, just a complete fucking basket case. So not the cool, calm, collected together individual I am today. LOL. LOL. What was that show where instead of laughing, she said LOL? I think it was either Curb Your Enthusiasm or Seinfeld. I have trouble remembering sometimes Curb Your Enthusiasm versus Seinfeld because they're both, in the voice of Larry David. So it's a little bit difficult. But anyway, interestingly, I just want to just shout out to you Neo viewers. I remember what I told you yesterday. Don't buy into the green candle. Don't buy into the pop. Don't do it. The only way you fight these market makers is buy on these deep red days. If you provide liquidity as a buyer into the top of a big green candle, they eat your lunch and they push back down anyway, but you just make it easier and more profitable for them to do so because they can dump on you at the top, sell short at the top, do all kinds of shenanigans at the top of that candle. Now, yeah, in the midterm, maybe another couple of weeks, the stock I think will be back up because I think institutions are buying in. But look at what they did here, guys. They returned 10 million shares or 6% of the entire short. So the shorts are getting out of the way and they're buying the stock. Just interesting for Neo. So I want to go into this sort of outline. And I know, guys, I'm not trying to say this is like my ideas or anything. This is just stuff I wrote up. It's basic common sense. And then I had, Copilot kind of organize it for me. But trust me, I fed it paragraphs of gibberish that it had to condense down to something resembling a coherent idea. But I kind of did this a few ways, and I just encourage you guys to do this yourself. Instead of just trying to analyze something, before you do that, try to come up with an actual framework to analyze that something and quantify things and make a system. And then that way, as you're going from stock to stock, from sector to sector, you can define these ideas and these concepts clearly in your head. And that'll make you have much less fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And that'll make you a better investor. And that'll make you a long-term investor, because a long-term investor does not let fear, uncertainty, and doubt dictate their actions. A long-term investor is an evidence-based investor. I used to say, I'm a total TAM investor. I used to say I'm a value investor. I used to say, more importantly than a value investor, I'm a valuation investor. Now I just call myself an evidence-based investor. I try to get out of the emotion, take it completely out of the equation, take the noise out of the equation, and just look at the actual facts, the actual fundamentals, the actual trends. What is management doing? Are they executing? How good is their plan? If they have a great plan, a great business, and they're executing on it, and they're making money, the margins are increasing, the sales are increasing, the momentum's increasing, that's what I want. But I can't put momentum into this because management does not care about short-term momentum unless they can gain some kind of advantage out of it. Management has pre-planned trading plans that sell this stuff. Noto with the forward agreement to hedge his risk somewhere between 18 and 50 or whatever. He can't make less, he can't make more. So the stuff, somebody was saying, oh, these are triggers. A lot of you guys don't understand anything you're talking about. Just anything, very basic anything. I had one asshole on here on the comments who's trying to tell me my business. Don't tell me my business, boy. It's all ball bearings these days. If you're a fan of Fletch, but that character, that airplane scene was it's down here. So I know, I was checking the luggage. Don't tell me my business, boy. Anyway, so what was I talking about? I can't even remember, but I got messed up on a Fletch analogy. So let's talk about my stupid outline. And I just kind of did this three ways. I did green flags, yellow flags, red flags. And then I did kind of a 2-question test. And then I did a flow chart. And then Copilot did these, but it's all, believe me, all this stuff is really, I put all this stuff in. Copilot can be a little bit useless if you don't tell it exactly what you want. Exactly. It doesn't come up with ideas. It can organize stuff, it can format it, but it's not good at coming up with ideas. Anyway, so when to buy the offering dip, this is kind of the framework. Like the green flags, they don't need the money. Okay, this is a continuum. It's not necessarily yes or no. The raise is optional, not survival. Now, this is one where I would say SMCI didn't score very well. Sofi was kind of middle, and then CRSP was really green on this. And then cash runway, already solid. Sofi had plenty of cash, but I would argue being cash flow negative, and with their growth plans and expansion, again, kind of down the middle. SMCI had no runway. They needed money, but their business was, making money. And I kind of put SMCI and SoFi in the kind of midpoint of this, and I would put again CRISPR in deep in the green. They have $2 billion in cash already. They really didn't need to raise another 560 million. But if you can get that convertible and you're trading at 58, you can get those people to buy that convertible with a converter with a that converts at 76 in the next 5 years. You look at that, okay, that's still 30-40% above your current level and 50% above where you are now. So you can buy now below 50, and they're agreeing to convert at 50% above that level. Those are things you want to look for. Management frames it as acceleration, not desperation. Yeah, that's a green flag. I wouldn't word it that way, the way Copilot did. I wouldn't worry about how management frames it. I was worried about how you perceive it, because management's always going to sell you that they're making the right decision, even if maybe they're not. So number two, fundamentals are strong. Green flags in terms of offering. And you have to look at also, is it an offering? Is it a convertible? Is it some type of other structured debt? Is it a loan? Are they going for conversion? Are they going for interest? Are they going for shares? Different lenders, different buyers can have different motivations. Some might want return, year after year. Some might actually believe in the company. Some might just believe the company's stable enough to pay them back and not give a shit. And then some others want to actually own the shares long term. So you have to kind of suss all that out and figure it out. And it's very, very difficult, but it's a lot easier if you have a framework. So fundamentals strong, revenue growing, margins are stable and improving, demand is exceeding capacity, and predictable, measurable growth. That's why when I look at things like this, I look at, why are they doing the offering? Obviously, if it's just to survive, just to keep the lights on, just to keep paying themselves salary, run like hell, head for the hills. Now, if it's for an acquisition, or going into a totally new business segment, that can be, very sketchy. Like VTAC, they're a medical company that does arrhythmias and sutures, and they just bought an airline. Like, it couldn't be more out of their wheelhouse. So it's like, it's not necessarily a red flag, but it's completely, a crazy Ivan, to the point where, how do you even analyze that? It's very, very difficult. So demand outstripping capacity, predictable, measurable growth. But on the flip side, obviously, if they're desperate, you want to run. If they're doing an acquisition, you have to really deeply analyze it. But if it's just their growth, the demand for what they're doing is so strong, and their margins are good, and what their business activities make money, but they just have the capability to do a lot more of that business activity if they have more capital, and the return on that capital is good and it's growing. That's the green flag. That's where you want to strike. And that's what I think SoFi gets such a big check mark on that one. Now, CRISPR, it's a little more, and I think SMCI, honestly, it was very, very shaky when they did the offering, but I think that picture is becoming more clear, that they were, in fact, in a position to grow, just like management was saying. And though a lot of people doubted that based on some, previous accounting irregularities or lies, whatever you want to call it, I still think they're in that position to grow. In terms of CRISPR, much less clear, because their rollout has been a little bit slower than expected. But I think that's just because people don't understand how these things roll and ramp. And I think the funnel is there, and I think they're actually getting it together on Caskevi, but they're still losing a lot of money. It's just a completely different thing, because you're pre-profit versus profitable, mature companies. You have one that's financial services, another that's AI hardware type of company, and then this one is kind of cutting edge biotech that's totally difficult to tell. Are there other therapies that are in like phase 1 and phase 2 going to ultimately get FDA approval? What does that market look like? What do the margins look like? What does the ramp look like? Very, very difficult to analyze earlier on in the game. Capital is going into high ROI growth, and we kind of talked a little bit about this. If you look at SoFi, the business lines that are expanding quickly, financial services, and then these new stablecoin partner with MasterCard, some of this stuff hasn't even started to pay dividends yet, but you can see the roadmap. You can see them pivoting to this high, ROI growth or ROC, whatever, ROC, return on capital, return on investment, whatever you want to say, doesn't really matter. Just basically, what do you get for your money? What are you using the money for? And is that use going to be, profitable and fruitful into the future? So expanding production, scaling profitable segments, marketing where, the customer acquisition cost is a lot less than the long-term value of that customer, infrastructure for predictable growth. I would argue on this one, SoFi, huge green flag. SMCI, I think somewhat of a green flag, a tepid green flag, like someone trying to send soup back at a deli. It's not hot. It's not cold so much. Just tepid. It's tepid. But with CRISPR, again, very hard. If they get there, it's going to be really big, return on investment, but it's much harder to tell if they're going to get there. I think SoFi and SMCI, those businesses, that growth is much more locked in and much more of a sure thing, even though it's in a different segment. Another green flag is that the offering price is over the current price, or I would argue the offering price is over your current perceived fair value. Now, if you thought SoFi was worth 22 and it was trading at 29 and they did an offering at 27.50, you should feel pretty good. If you thought SoFi was worth 40 and it was trading at 29, they did an offering at 27.50, you're thinking, why cut off your wiener to spite your face? Offering price over the current price, market overreacts, you're able to buy cheaper than the institutions. It just, no matter what on an offering, stock usually crashes. Even if it's a quick crash, along like CRISPR crashed quick, SoFi crashed a little slower. SMCI just crashed every day for a variety of reasons, mostly valid. But I really think they got their shit together and they just are at the right place and time. I think Uncle Chucky's a freaking genius. So, belief in management's another one you could put in here, is just overall your faith in management to execute and to use the capital wisely. I mean, that's really what all this bullshit comes down to. If SMCI just hires a great CFO, somebody with a lot of gravitas, somebody who nobody will even question, somebody who will rule with an iron fist, that stock should be, I would argue that stock should be trading like $100. But again, nobody elected me to anything, and I'm just a tiny wang broke piker running on home to get my shine box for my Uber side hustle. I drive around doing shoe shines. Call me. It's buried in the app. It's below like courier, animal transport, shoe shine. Look for me. I'm the only one who comes. I cover all the major markets on the Western Seaboard. Weekends, I cover the East Coast. If you need your wingtips polished up in Baltimore, old Danny's got you covered. Old cornbread, man. Remember that Johnny Cash song about the shoe shine boy or whatever? So the management, what it's talking about, management allocates capital well, another green flag. Past raises led to growth, clear communication, skin in the game. So you want to look SMCI, a lot of insider ownership. Even all three of these companies have high insider ownership. Clear communication, what is the money going to be used for? Obviously, with SMCI, that's completely obvious. With CRISPR, I think it's quite obvious to advance their pipeline to, Vertex is paying really for the rollout of Casgevy and stuff. So this is mainly to advance their in-house pipeline, possibly gain partnerships for that in the future. So yeah, that'd be another green flag. In terms of yellow flags, this is obviously case by case because these are kind of your wobblers, kind of your tweeners. Acquisition, good, accretive, strategic, profitable, bad, overpriced, distracting. Acquisitions can be totally go both ways. I kind of look at most acquisitions as bad in terms of money raises because you don't know. It's a huge unknown. And, the market does not like uncertainty. The market likes to know what you're getting, to know what the growth is going to be. And an acquisition, you just, especially in like industries like media and tech, a lot of times it just doesn't work out. A lot of times it doesn't pay off. Now, I would argue with SoFi, they were actually long-term very smart to buy Galileo and Technesis and get that vertical integration. Other people would disagree with me. Obviously, CRISPR is probably more likely to be acquired than to acquire someone else, but they did make a deal for the sRNA, or mRNA, whatever the fuck it is. SMCI, I don't think they're going to do any major acquisition. They don't need to. They have more demand coming out of their ass than they could ever raise. So convertible terms, if it's clean, it's fine. If it's floorless, it could be a death spiral. So you have to look, where does it convert? All kinds of other things. Is there a poison pill? Is there a kicker? Is there a ratchet? All this fun stuff. Are you a ratchet? Raise size, big relative to the market cap, needs context. This is again, yellow flag. What are they doing? What are they doing with the money? how much is it? Like, are they diluting you like SoFi, 4% and then 3%? Are they diluting you? The CRISPR dilution is pretty big because it's a $5 billion or less than a $5 billion market cap, and they're raising, 560 billion. So it's like 12% dilution. So it's very significant. And what do you know? Lo and behold, the stock drops 12% off a cliff almost instantly, even though the conversion is way above the stock price. People don't care because it's still a lot of dilution. And why do we care what they're paying for their shares? All we know is our shares are going to be less a piece of the pie. So you got to just analyze all this stuff as best you can. I am obviously incapable of such complex logical calculations and such. That's why I'm trying to provide this idiotic framework. But anyway, red flags, obviously, these are very obvious things. Not saying I'm reinventing the wheel or coming up with any type of new dissertation here or anything. They need the money to survive. If a cash runway is less than 6 months, I would just run like hell. That raises life support. It's basically to pay the executives' salaries until they can jump ship and get on somewhere else with a company that's going to survive. If the fundamentals are weakening, obviously declining revenue, shrinking margins, missing guidance, huge red flags. Another red flag, capital used to patch holes in the books, paying debt, covering losses, plugging gaps in the balance sheet. Bad management history, frequent dilutions, no return on investment, under promising, over delivering. I look at CRISPR, I'm really confident in management. SMCI, I'm very confident in Uncle Chucky, but I'm less confident in the financial stuff, even though I think Wigger is starting to grow on me. With SoFi, I'm still quite confident in management, but I do have to say that management and retail shareholders are not aligned their interests. I don't think Anthony Noto, Chris Lapointe, Jeremy Rochelle give two shits if we're alive or dead, even though it's basically retail investors who's kept this company afloat. Because I think without retail propping this thing up, without us, fanboys and pumpers, this stock could have been killed. I mean, if they can drive the stock down to $3, how are they going to raise money? And without retail pushing on this thing, it never makes this run. I know they say you can run it up to dump it on our head, but if you're not going to buy the run up, it doesn't really do them any good, does it? So the two question test, just to boil it down, is the raise for growth or survival? Pretty obvious which one you want to buy. If the money raise makes the company more valuable per share or less valuable per share, that goes into the dilution. That goes into how much cash they're getting for what. If it's growth and more valuable, buy the dip. If it's survival and less valuable, obviously avoid and head for the hills. Kind of put it into a flow chart, but it's all the same stuff. Do they need money to survive? If yes, get out, avoid the dip. Are the fundamentals strong? If yes, stay in. Weak fundamentals. Is the capital growing into high growth ROI? Where are they using the money for? If SoFi, I think going into stablecoin, going into crypto, doing, pegging the SoFi USD to the dollar, working with MasterCard, all of these things, I think have the potential to be high ROI growth. So I would go for a yes there. I would go for a yes with, SMCI, with, CRISPR, you just don't know the answer to that question yet, but I'm willing to dip a toe in the water anyway. Obviously, with acquisitions, proceed with caution. Is the stock trading below the offering price? Buy the dip. Obviously, you're buying cheaper than institutions. That's what I'm saying. Are the institutions idiots who bought at $27.50, or are you the idiot if they convince you to dump at $18.50 to them, and then they can buy more shares for a third less than they just paid, which might have been kind of the goal all along. Believe it or not, they do play that. So offering dip scorecards, just another way to look at it. Need for money, desperate, moderate, optional. And you can plug in anything you want. I'm not saying this is just kind of to give you guys some ideas. I'm not a spreadsheet guy, but fundamentals, weak, mixed, strong. You have to, the real thing is not the framework. The real thing is you actually answering these questions and figuring out how to plug them in and how to score them. Use of capital, patch holes, mixed or high growth ROI. Obviously, you always want to be over here in this 2-point area. Management, poor track record, unknown, strong track record, offering price below market, at the money, above the market. CRISPR's here above the market. SoFi was a little below the market at the time. SMCI was just sort of desperate, paying interest, paying a kicker, all that stuff. Interpreting the score, 8 to 10, strong growth, strong fundamentals, mispriced dip. 5 to 7, if you're somewhere in the middle, go by case by case. 0 to 4, you just can't find any reasons. The money raise was good. Go ahead and avoid that sucker like the plague. Boy, oh boy, that was a lot of talking. Is anybody left? Am I on mute? On mute. So anyway, red flag number 1, edit. 6 months should be 6 months. Yeah, Chris, you guys got to think I'm not saying this is perfect. I wrote this long ass paragraph like a book and then told AI to give me some visuals on it. Always had to deal with liquidity issues that needed to be done in order to take the company to the next level. Matt, I think the accounting irregularities actually had to do with salespeople and sales teams wanting to push revenues forward inappropriately so they could get their commissions that quarter instead of the next quarter, and probably management trying to pump things. But yeah, structurally, I don't think there was. I always said it's all smoke and no fire, and if you that's borne out by what happened afterward. I mean, they didn't have to do major adjustments. There was no fake revenues. All of this related party stuff was completely overblown. It was just a minuscule fraction of 1% of their sales. So I agree with you there, Matt Anton and Chris. Concert Corner, appreciate that. Red flag number 1. I gotta look back. I didn't even read this before I put it up. Red flag number 1, cash runway less than 6 months. Well, no, well, this is if it's a red flag. So cash runway less than 6 months would be a red flag. Cash runway greater than 6 months, still not a green flag. I want to see cash runway of like a couple years to be a big green flag, or at least a year. But yeah, so I think maybe you're wrong or I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe both of us have tiny wangs and we're just ships passing in the night touching tips, Chris. You never know. Anyway, guys, I can't even talk anymore. I feel dumber for doing this video. But again, the point of this video was not to get you guys to think like this or use this sort of simplistic offering framework. The point was to get you to think critically about your investments and what happens to these companies and why the companies are doing what they're doing, how they're timing what they're doing, what it means for you as a shareholder versus, because what it means for you as a shareholder is not always aligned with sort of the long term what it means for the company, because maybe you don't have the same timetable as management. Maybe you have less time. Maybe you need your money, in a month to pay your income tax, and Anthony Noto does not. And Anthony Noto's thinking 10 years down the road when he wants to retire and ride off into the sunset with a couple of $1 billion, that cham wow money. You know what I mean? Know what I mean? If they drop SoFi more, I got a drone stock I'm up on that I can sell and bust that portfolio wide open. Bust it, Billy Jack. Bust it. I keep getting sponsored videos from Felix. Buy my course. Oh, that course comes with a big gagger of Peruvian nose clams, if you know what I mean. No, Felix is a pretty good guy, I think. I don't know. I have no idea. He likes dogs. I like dogs. Yeah, 10X has been doing quite well. I think prop is still going to do quite well. I'm thinking about buying more IOVA tomorrow, dip down into the 4s. I think ultimately IOVA is a very strong stock. When they get that lung cancer data out, the FDA approves their lung cancer therapy, guys, this stock is going to moon. Absolutely moon. Yeah, I'm still got a really big 10X position. I did get out of a few of my shares kind of when it topped out there. I didn't sell right at the top or anything, but I just, I'd had the shares go from like a couple bucks up to whatever it was, 20. I can't even remember. So I did flip a few, but I still have big 10X position. I really believe in this company fundamentally long term. But sometimes I do have to sell a little bit, guys, and pay some bills because, I tend to pump way too much money into penny stocks. But yeah, I'm really proud of my work. I mean, 10X would be another great example because their offering with Roth was absolutely one of the worst offerings I ever saw. They sold 90% of the company for like $16 million. And their deal they got with Oppenheimer after that was actually quite good. They got like $100 million. The structure of it was good, but both times they gave away the whole company. But if you're going to give away a whole company, it's at least nice to get paid. Am I right? Am I right? Thanks, Ken. Ken Burkowski. Burkowski. Good Polish man. I love Polacks. Tough motherfuckers. I don't know if that's a Polish name, but dude, don't fuck around with Polish people. I learned that the hard way. They're strong. They don't fuck around. And they have no fear. It's like you'd be better off fucking with a Westie. Dude, if you see a hardy Polish guy coming your way, just give him wide berth. So he could probably take you up and snap you into like a crisp sausage casing at a ball game. You know what I mean? Know what I mean? Jai is here, former sorry, If you're not Polish, I apologize. Um, Even if you are Polish, I apologize. No, I love Polish people. I like guys, just not just for your sausage, or your wiener, cocktail wiener, as it might be, or gherkins. No, I just, I've always liked different groups, diverse people. So yeah, Polish people are one of my favorites because you know they'll cut you. But no, yeah, of course, JHI, nothing to see here, nothing to worry about. Everything is just fine. Guys, SoFi, even today, CRISPR falling off a cliff, as per usual. SMCI was basically even on the day. If you look at these stocks, I mean, you go back, SMCI has basically been held at almost the same place since mid-November. And then if you look at SoFi, what do you know? Kind of been held near the same place since early February, but they're really pegging it to that 850 level. I mean, look at this pre-market, during the market, closing, just right here at 850. I mean, it comes down, touches it here. I don't know why they're, I mean, I do know why, because of options and derivatives and God knows what. And basically, you know, it's a nice equilibrium, perhaps, where they want to accumulate. Some market makers want to sell. Some market makers willing to sell here. Some market makers want to buy here. But bottom line, they're making a market here that's profitable for them and frustrating for us with our tiny wing energy. SoFi ends the year high 20s, low 30s, prime to rip on good 2027. Yeah, I mean, that sounds fairly logical and fairly good to me, I hope. And if the economy, we get out of this war, the economy remains strong, I think it's quite possible it goes even higher, goes back to all-time highs, but that's asking for quite a bit. But Sanjay's left foot, appreciate you, buddy. Ken, my favorite Polish friend, whether you're Polish or not, you're Polish in my mind now. So that's how I am, guys. I make up characters for you guys. Chris, Concert Corner, appreciate you, buddy. Matt Anton, the great Matt Anton, is with us. Appreciate you, sir. Jeff M, thanks for coming, Jeff. Carl, always appreciate you. The Mattress King of Chicago, the great Billy Jack, my representative down in Texarkana, one of the best in the business. Probably, I don't know, Billy Jack might be my favorite viewer. I don't know. I hate most of you. I love Katie Wentworth. Can't go wrong with somebody, the great Katie Wentworth. Mark M. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate you. The great Brian with a Y, Brian McLaughlin. Brady the Beetle Bonds, he's here. I blame the McLaughlin group. Oh, wrong. What do you think the inflation rate will be next year, Fred? He's like, I'd say it'll be about 6. Wrong. Used to love John McLaughlin when I was a kid. I don't know what kind of kid loves John McLaughlin and Crossfire. I used to just, once I go over to friends who had cable, I'd just be fascinated by CNN. I'd never seen anything. We grew up in a, cow town. I'll be happy about Neo PSU if they never hit goals. Yeah, there you go. Management does not care about the 1 to 2 year shareholders. Certainly right. Jeff, appreciate you. The great Beach Boy was here. Thank you, Beach Boy. Greetings and salutations, my friend. The fight was here, bringing the fire on your wire gets the lead in the pencil, if you know what I mean. I think you do. Brian, thanks a lot. Sanjay, thank you so much. Appreciate you, buddy. Chris, once again. Carl, dude, ass face was here. Try streaming in lowercase. No, I always yell. I'm always a psycho. I can't do it any other way, and I just don't know how to do anything else. But dude, ass face, Jeff, Carl, appreciate you guys. Whoever else was here, I didn't talk to. No Tracks Full, the great No Tracks Full, one of our best viewers, of course. Looks a bit like Alfred E. Newman, just much, much more handsome. But no, seriously, looks like Alfred E. Newman. Dude ass face, went by Dip, Putin. Yeah, and then we're back up talking politics. The Dave was here. Thank you, the Dave. Appreciate you once again. Katie Wentworth, great Katie Wentworth, always a fan favorite. We here doing Poco Moss are big Katie Wentworth fans, and we appreciate you joining us. Carl R. Pikazubal, I'm not a pro anti-Israel Arab, but Netanyahu does have a resemblance to Beelzebub. Oh man, you guys kill me. You guys are funny. I got that. Like I said, I have a tiny micro wing audience, but I really feel like I have a great audience. You guys are really good. Tortuga de Rio. Thanks for joining us, Tortuga. Appreciate you, buddy. No Tracks Full. Was anybody else here? I don't know why. I just like to thank everybody who bothered to stop by and leave a comment. Makes it feel more personal. Hands off my booty. Welcome and hello, and welcome, my ghostly friend. And Chris, Concert Corner. We already said hello to you about 1 million times. And Jeff, the great Lisa was here. Because we were putzes. Yeah, well, you certainly got me pegged there. The White Sensation was here. White Sensation, thanks for joining us. Lisa, appreciate you, Lisa. Always long-term viewer, long-term supporter of the show. The great Lisa H. Appreciate you, Lisa. Who else was here? Carl Seamark, of course, we know. And our number one commenter, number one in our hearts, number one in the charts, the great Oleg Alexandrov. Guys, thanks so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. Hopefully you got something out of it. I doubt you did, but at least I was able to waste almost an hour and a half of your workday, and that makes it just a little bit more palatable. Guys, it is Un, Poco, Moss, the show where we try to give you just a little bit more. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk at you again real soon. Have a great day. Peace. I'm out. Also, thanks, Not a Lurker, J Money, even though you weren't here this time. We love you, buddy. We love your big, beautiful, bald head. Holding it down in Jersey. Thanks, Not a Lurker. For everything you do for the show. Really appreciate you. Thank you, Princess J. Thank you, Princess J, just for putting up with me and keeping me alive and, you know, as sane as I can be. Guys, thanks a lot. Peace. I'm out.